G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. We'll have all the show notes and any resources mentioned in the cast on our website. Came second in business plan competition while at university. The following year, from his passion from running marathons, pitched a wearable device that monitors your hydration. Seeing the potential in the product, aged 28, in 2013 he bought out his business partners, landed over $1 million US investment in late 2015 pre-revenue. That value has since more than tripled with no sales yet. Then merged with a diabetes wearable device company. The combined business has an 8 to 9 figure valuation, somewhere between 10 million and 99 million US dollars. From 1 FTE, Devin himself, to 40 in the merged business, felt he'd succeeded when, I'll let you know when I get there. Hardest thing about growing a small business is work-life balance. What Devin would tell himself on day one of starting out is, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, strap in and enjoy the ride. In episode 2, I talked with Charles, who, with 30 FTE, sells furniture and other household items from Southeast Asia, while he's based in the beautiful beaches of Byron Bay, with the 3 stores over 2,000 kilometres away. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Devin Miller from Miller IP, based in Utah in the United States. Thanks for your time this morning.
Oh, my pleasure. It's excited to be on.
And how we know each other, Catherine from your team reached out and thought you might be great to come on the cast, and I'm looking forward to hearing both the first business that we're going to speak about and then mix it up today a bit and talk as a subject matter expert on IP law and the importance of that in fast-growing small businesses.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I'm happy to share and excited to share a little bit about my business, as well as a little bit about why patents and trademarks may be relevant and helpful to startups and small businesses.
Yeah, well, let's start with that, because you've built a few businesses that patents and trademarks have been obviously crucial for their success. So if you can pick one business to talk about, let us know where it's located, what it does, and how it makes money.
Absolutely. So I'll pick the one that's probably, or I don't know, my favorite. They're all kind of like children, that they're all your favorite, but they're all different. You have to pick one. So the one that comes to mind is, when I was backing up this, I'll give you a bit of the backstory. So yep. I did undergraduate, I did electrical engineering and Chinese. So got a dual degrees in that. And then I was decided I was going to go off and do graduate school. And I was kind of looking between, I love the business on the startup side and I also love the law side. So I said, why choose one? I'll just do both. So I went off and did a law degree as well as an MBA degree at the same time. And while I was going through the schooling on both, there was I think it must have been a flyer. Somehow I can't remember if it was a flyer or an email at this point. Got a notification, hey, there's a business competition that's going to be coming up. And it's a multidisciplinary competition. Everybody show up, you'll form your teams, and you can enter to win, kind of thing. And then they have a prize at the end, and it's kind of over a space of several months. And so I said, oh, that sounds like fun. I don't have enough. I only have a wife, a newborn, doing 2 degrees. And so I said, why not? One more thing. So I did that, and I said, I showed up, and I said, so I found 3 other people that didn't know before then, but we all kind of said, hey, who needs a team? Well, I need a team, and I don't have anybody. So the 4 of us got together, and the first year that we got together, we came up with an idea that didn't really go anywhere. It was to make gym bags not smell so bad, and we entered it in. We took second place and kind of went on our merry way. Didn't go much more with that. We were all, I think, juniors at the time, so getting back to the last year of all of us getting ready to graduate, we decided we'd do it one more time. So got back together the next year. They had the competition again, and got together and said, well, let's do a new idea. We weren't as jazzed about the old idea. So came up with some crazy ideas, everything from self-packaging boxes to other things. Didn't love any of the ideas. So we're sitting there kind of brainstorming, and, I couldn't come up with one. So I was walking back from one of our brainstorming sessions, and at that time, and I'm still pretty actively in it, I'd run my first marathon. I didn't hydrate very well. It was painful. It wasn't as fun as it sounds. And so, or I don't know if it sounds fun to anybody. But so wouldn't it be cool if you can monitor your hydration level? You can see where you're at, and you got to think, this is back in about 2012, 2013. It was before the Fitbit hadn't come out. Apple Watch hadn't come out, nothing. But I'm like, it'd be cool to have kind of a wearable that can monitor hydration. So came up with the idea and took it back to the team. They all thought it was great. So we started to prototype it. I came back over the winter break with Christmas and got together with my dad, and he's an electrical engineer, and we started cranking on it, figured out a prototype, entered it into the competition. We took second place again, which is a slightly sweet or bitter point in the sense that the only reason,
yeah.
And I'll give it the 2 seconds. The only reason at least from my perspective, we didn't win is because the team that had won the previous year took all their earnings, dumped it back in the same product, entered the same one. So they were already ahead of everybody else that had to come up with a new product. So it wasn't that they're better. It's just that they was farther along because they dumped more money into it.
Yep.
That is aside. So then I said, okay, we got to the end, took second place, and said, well, I think there's a business that can be built around this. I think this is more than just a competition. And we were all going to go our own ways, all the different people in the competition. So I said, I'd like to buy you guys out. So I made them a buyout offer, purchased any ownership they would have had in the idea or anything else, and went forward. So graduated, and then I kind of took a dual path. So the one sense I'd had my law degree, wanted to be a patent and trademark attorney, started working for law firms. At the same time, I'm saying I have this idea, or more than idea, we have a prototype, we've proven that it works, let's start to build that. So in parallel paths, as I'm doing the full-time law, I'm also doing a full-time startup, and we started to build a prototype, push it along, get it a bit more refined down. And we're saying, okay, we push it as far as we can, working with blood, sweat, and tears, and on our own time. So we brought in an investor. Investor came in, put in a 7-figure investment, and we had a bit more runway, something that we could now take this from kind of a business competition, push it as far as we could to an actual product. So we built that up. We actually started to test it with everything from NFL teams to college teams. We had there's a university out in now I'm blanking out that that does a lot of hydration monitoring and does a lot with hydration. And so we took they did a study on it, and we were really getting to the point of, hey, let's push. We've got it. We've got the studies. We've had it tested, had positive feedback. We've either got to go get our next round of funding and take it to the next level, or we can't do it with what we're at. So as we were doing that, looking for funding, figuring out our next steps, how we're going to take it to the marketplace, we had somebody else that came along and said, hey, what we're doing is we are doing a wearables, but we're in diabetes monitoring. And so we'd like to do diabetes monitoring. And what you guys are doing with all your sensors and the technology and algorithms fits really well with what we're doing. Why don't we partner up? Why don't we take licenses with each other, put all the technology together, form a company, and do that? So that's kind of, rather than continue on the hydration, it was a good opportunity, good market, good fit. We took a license, started to work with them and developing that. They're actually now a company. They've gone on to raise, 8 figures type business, and they're getting ready to launch in Q1 of next year with the technology.
Wow.
So that's probably a short question, a long answer, but that kind of gives you an idea of one of the startups I've done.
That's great. And it sounds, like a wonderful journey, Devin. I just had one question back on the Chinese, learning Chinese. I was in China late last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it something like there's 50,000 different written characters, or is it more?
It's a good question, and it gets into whether or not you look at traditional or non-traditional. The average is to read a newspaper, and that's kind of your standard. You need to know about 20,000 characters. Wow. I never got to that point. Yeah. I focus more on the speaking. Yeah. But so you look at the interesting thing, and this is a complete aside, little kids take much longer in China and in Chinese to be able to read and write than it does in the US, because it's pure memorization. There isn't it's not phonetic. You can't really just learn an alphabet, sound it out. And so eventually it levels out and they keep up. But yeah, there's so much more characters to learn that they're several years behind as far as when they start to read and write, be it versus English speakers.
Yeah. So out of interest, what drew you to learning Chinese? Or I assume Mandarin.
Yeah, so it started out, so I served a religious mission for my church, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as Mormons or LDS, and I served in Taiwan for a couple years. So Taiwan also speaks Mandarin Chinese. They're the same language, and so I picked it up initially there. And then when I came back, I'd studied electrical engineering for a year before, went out and served my mission for 2 years, and then came back and I said, well, picked up the language. I'd like to continue on to learn it and incorporate it. So I said, why don't I do it as a double major?
Yeah, great. And you sound a little bit driven and competitive from all the activity you've just described. Jeez. Wow.
Probably. I don't know that you ever have any attorneys, good attorneys that aren't driven and aren't doing it. So that's probably personality. And then I like startups and small businesses, and I like to compete and win. So probably more than a little bit there.
Yep. Yeah, great. So getting back to the questions here. So how you started out, you've pretty much covered that. How old were you when you brought your business partners out and decided to really go hard on this?
Now you're asking a hard question. I would have been, so I graduated in 2000, now I got to do all the math. So I graduated undergraduate in 2009. And so it would have been 2013 when I bought them out. And I am now 35 and it's 2020. So take
28.
28. There you go. You did the math quicker than I did. 28. So I was 28 when I bought them out. Yep.
Yeah, great. And so you still have equity in that business at the moment?
Yeah, I do. So still have equity in the business, still continuing to develop the technology, working with a lot of other smart people to push it forward and take it forward. So yep, absolutely.
And what kind of hours a week on average would you spend on that business out of interest? On a given week, I'm probably anywhere from, on a smaller week, 50 hours on a week basis, probably anywhere 25 on the lower end to 40 on the higher end. Yep. And you've got your Miller Law IP firm as well on top of that.
Yep. So I work a lot of hours.
You must have a very understanding wife.
I've learned to balance it as best I can. So she is great, supportive, very understanding, and then I've also figured out a way to balance it to be there with the wife and the kids as well.
Yeah, great. We'll get onto that balance question a little later on. But do you have any key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of this business?
I mean, you're going to take, if you're to take all the way from inception, which was zero, and then you're to take that in 2013, we did it for about 2 years kind of on the side. So that takes you to about 2015, got the 7-figure investment in end of 2015, grew that. It was still pre-revenue. But you were to say, if you were to evaluate it when we made the merger, you're about tripled in valuation from all of the work that went into that. Now, if you were to take the current business that we've partnered up with, meshed everything together, and done all of that, you're at an 8-figure, and if you're to look at projections, you're probably projecting out to be a 9-figure within the next year to 2 years.
As an evaluation or annual sales?
If you were to go purely based on sales, you're at 8 figures. If you were to go to a projection, it'd be a 9 figures.
Yeah, great. And what about full-time equivalents was just yourself starting out a bit of part-time in 2013 effectively?
Full-time equivalent. Sorry, ask your question one more time.
So FTE, full-time equivalent, so number of hours worked in the business in a week divided by 40 gives you the FTE. So in 2013, after buying business partners out, it was pretty much just yourself. I'm assuming you were part-time, which for you is probably a 40-hour week. So,
I was going to say, yeah, probably if 2013, I was doing it as a student, probably 10, 15 hours, or probably 10 hours a week to be fair. When I graduated, I was probably at about 20 hours for a couple of years up to 2015. That grew as the business grew. I was probably upwards of 30 to 40 hours, and that was my side job, and it was as much as a real job, and I'm probably about there now. So it hasn't ever settled back down, but I do balance it a little bit. 1 week is heavy on the IP law firm, and the other week is heavy on the intellectual on the business side.
And what about in that wearable tech business, the FTE now? Like, how many other team members would there be?
Probably, I'll have to give you a guesstimate or an estimate.
Yeah.
Probably 35, 40, somewhere in there.
Okay, that's great. And that's the merged business.
Yep. So that's when we take our business, we merged with the other business, took all of our employees, took their employees, took investment dollars, hired everybody, all sorts of fun things. But yeah.
Great. Awesome. And when was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
I'll let you know when I get there. I mean, I don't know. It depends on how you measure success. I mean, dollars wise, and if I were to look at, hey, what is the business worth and what could I sell my ownership and where am I at? I mean, probably, I guess I don't know that I would say arrived, but I would say I'm happy with it in the sense of, but I don't know that I measure everything with just a dollars wise success.
Well, that's the next question. What does success look like to you? Yeah.
So, I mean, so if I were to say what is success, it's really more of, I have the ability to, one, run the businesses the way I want, and two, be able to a bit captain my own destiny. And, you know, this bleeds over into the law side, but, you know, one thing, I worked with a lot of bigger law firms before I did my own firm, but I would, you know, bleeds over into all startups is really, there's a difference between working for somebody else and you can make a lot of money, or there's a difference between working for yourself, and whether or not you make a lot of money, you can make your own decisions, you can grow the business, you can take it the directions, implement the programs. And that's probably more of the success that I look at, is to be able to kind of captain my own ship, make my own decisions, and be able to run things the way I think that makes sense. Yeah. And that one's, you know, in one sense, I'm running my own businesses and I've done well and I enjoy that. So I feel that I've arrived. And yet on the other hand, I still feel I'm always growing, I'm always expanding, and I'm always making it better. So I don't know that I'll ever arrive.
Yeah, about half the people answer similar. Yeah, not there yet. I'll let you know when I do get there. I think the technology you've developed is very exciting, and obviously in a great space with the Apple Watch taking off, but obviously the first mover with Fitbit. I remember hearing on a podcast a few years ago, a tech investor, quite a seasoned tech investor out of San Francisco, he was saying how Fitbit was the greatest investment return he's ever made. He bought in quite early, obviously, and they've just been riding that wave. So they must be, are they on your radar for acquisition for you guys?
Never say never. I mean, if you're to take where we're at, we're doing wearables for diabetes monitoring. Yep. And so it's more of a medical device, or at least a medical play, right? Or health, and in a sense, you can say it's a health play, but a lot of what we're doing is much more through insurance companies and hospitals and those type of things, which is a different arena than really what Apple and or Fitbit play in the sense that they're just direct to consumer, right? Everybody wants a Fitbit. They'll go buy it themselves. You put it on, you count your steps. And what we're doing is much more of a, hey, we're actually working to change the medical industry, making people more compliant and drive down insurance costs. So there's certainly a possibility that we'll cross paths, but on the other sense, there's probably other players more so in the medical industry that were more on the radar than necessarily a consumer device.
Yeah, great. And with the hydration on the athletics, you mentioned marathons before. There's obviously that's quite a growing sector. With Strava as a great proxy to show just how popular those sports are becoming. So it sounds like you've got a good market outside of health as well.
Yeah, I think that, you know, now you take the plan of, you know, you always pick the one that, or pick something that you can make an entrance in that makes sense, and then you expand out your product offering and the verticals and that from there. So initially hit the diabetes and that vertical, but there's certainly everything from hydration we could still hit on. You have a lot of governmental with monitoring everything from soldiers to how they're doing to whether they're distressed. Yeah, workplace safety. You could get into even, you know, COVID pandemic and monitoring for people that are having differences in their medical readings and how. So there's a lot of places to take it. You got to pick your first one, kind of pick the where you make the hill that you fight the battle on, and then you grow from there.
Absolutely, yeah. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Oh, I'd probably say it's defining who your target or market is, and because it's always easy to say I'm going to be everything to everybody, right? Yeah. I'm going to be able to make it so that this product covers everybody, because I don't want to leave anybody out. I don't want anybody. I don't want to miss that sale. Yeah. I don't want to miss it. And yet, when you try and be everything to everybody, you end up being nothing to nobody in the sense that you're never going to sell it because you don't know who you're selling it to. You don't know who to make your product to. So define your market, define who your customer is, and then figure out where they're at, right? So one thing is to find out who the customer is, but then you need to figure out this is where they're typically at. This is where they're located. This is where I can market to them or I can target it to them. And I think that probably works all across all businesses in the sense that not everybody's the same. The people that we target on the medical side with the wearable are different than the people I target on the law firm, and they're different than the other businesses I run. But finding who that target person is and where they're at and how to reach them is the ones that what I would hit on.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And also you can tailor your language and your communications to be more, to resonate more with each segment
Exactly. And to give you a kind of an idea, one is, and I'll jump between a few. One of the things I do is on the religious products, and that one is geared very well towards Facebook. Law firms don't gear towards Facebook.
Yeah.
Wearables don't gear towards online as much, and it's much more of insurance companies and B2B and face-to-face. And so everyone is different, and yet if I tried to just simply replicate one model into all, it wouldn't work. And so, I completely agree.
Yep. Now, you've touched on funding. You got the 7-figure investment to the end of 2015. Any other funding along that journey, bank finance or other investment?
Yeah, there have been, and I got to be careful because some of it's a bit on the proprietary or, confidential side.
Yep.
There have been, notes, there have been investors, there have been equity, there have been just general angel type investors and convertible notes. So as a company originally started out, it was a pure investing for equity. As we've gotten bigger, it's gotten a bit more sophisticated, and you brought on different types of investors and money, really with the idea of let's protect as much equity as we can, because that's the thing that you can't get back. If your company goes well, everybody wants to hold on to their equity. Yeah,
that's right. I think that's an interesting point to touch on for the audience, because I only certainly learned about convertible notes a few years ago. They're quite an exciting opportunity for growth. And correct me if I've got any of this wrong here, Devin, but convertible note generally is an investor will loan you money for, say, a term of 2 years at an interest rate. And at any point along that 2 years, the investor can choose to convert that loan into equity at a preset valuation, which is obviously usually pretty friendly by the end of the 2-year term or whatever term you set to it. Or at the end of the 2 years, if the value of the business hasn't matched the equity that was given at the start, as part of the convertible note, then they can just get their money back with plus their interest. Have I pretty much described it?
One avenue. There's a few ways you can do it. What you described is one way. Another way you can do it is almost the opposite of, hey, we're going to take out a loan with a set interest rate. If we pay it back within, I don't know, whatever the term is, 2 years, 5 years, whatever, and you set your term, then we can keep the equity that we have. If at that end of that term we don't pay back our loan, you have the option to take, instead of the money that we have in the prorated portion, you get the equity or equivalent of it. So you set your terms. This is how much you'll convert it over to. You can either pay the terms of the note, or you can convert it over to equity at the end of that term if we either haven't made payment or for any reason don't follow through.
You can write your term sheet up however you want to say. If we pay it out early, then you don't get equity, or other ones I've seen do allow the investor to flip to equity at any point if they want. Just depends on your relationship. The great thing about the convertible note I've found is that the investor gets to have a close look, particularly at management and the business, the running of the business, and get to know the people before they feel really comfortable to say, yep, okay, my money's in as equity.
Yeah, and I think on the business owner side, you're saying, hey, we need money. If we have to, we'll give up equity. But if things go according to plan, if we're able to make our payments as we project over a period of time, we can protect that equity and rather just pay an interest on what would be more of a loan. If on the other hand, things don't go well, we can then convert that over as equity and we're protected. So it kind of gives you the access to capital while protecting your equity, assuming things go well with your business.
Yep. And if you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into this wearable tech industry?
If I was a startup, I don't know. I'm a person that has too many interests, and I have to start to pick my interests. I think wearables is a really good spot, and I think it's one that's growing. It's one that's growing, but it's still kind of figuring out what it wants to be when it grows up. In the sense that Fitbit is a huge company; they've done very well, and yet name the last thing that they've done innovative, right? They really haven't done anything innovative, and now they've kind of saturated the marketplace. So now you're taking, and a little bit the same with Apple. Even if you look at their new announcements, they add on an EKG or a heart rate, and it's like it's slightly better than what the previous one, but they haven't really figured out what the market is. And so I think that wearables are here to stay, and there's a lot of opportunity, but you have to figure out more than just kind of a one-hit wonder or something you're going to saturate the marketplace, how you're going to position yourself. And if you can find that, then that's where I'd put my money if it wasn't in my law firm or other products. But that would be one that I would certainly go for.
And can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Sorry, you say that one more time?
Sorry. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Yeah, that one's an easy one. So the most stressful point. So we had back before we even did the merger and it was still the original company, we had a frivolous lawsuit filed against us. And people would say, "Oh, well, you're an attorney, that you should be able to handle that, right?"
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm not a litigation attorney. I'm much more on the patent and prosecution side. But even beyond that, I can handle some of it. But on the other hand, it now pulls you away from the business, growing it, doing the exciting things and marketing it and building it. Now you're going to go and get to go deal with other lawyers. You got to deal with other opposing counsel. You get to spend a whole bunch of money that you don't want to spend on things and everything else. And so we had a frivolous lawsuit filed against us. It didn't have any merit, but it still took a lot of time and attention. They thought that they could simply bleed us dry. Now the positive on it is, so it played out over the course of about a year. And at the end of that, we were able to reach a settlement, and the company that was filed the frivolous lawsuit had other technology, and so we just ended up purchasing them out for pennies on the dollar, incorporated it to what we're doing, and it actually increased our valuation a pretty good fold. And so it was a stressful, horrible thing during that year time, but coming out of it, it played to our benefit. But it wasn't. If you would have asked me at any point in that time or that year's time, I would have said I hated life. So it's gotten much better.
Yeah, great. And what area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Yeah, so one of them, and it's one of the companies, and I'm going to jump to just one of the other companies that we've got. It's a software as a service or a SaaS company.
Yep.
And it's still pre-revenue. We're getting ready to launch within the next couple months. So it's just about there. We've got a pretty good pipeline and everything else. But that was one that, on the one sense, I know the industry very well, but I haven't been through the full development of a software product for software as a service for this type of industry. Exactly. So it was one where I was having to step outside a bit of a comfort zone, whereas I know law very well. I know wearables extremely well. I know electrical engineering very well. Doing a software as a service company was just one where I didn't have as much of a background. I was pushed to rely on others and other experts, which pushed me outside of my normal comfort zone of I know as much or as more as the experts do. And so it was one where I had to step out. And yet that one was one that has a great potential, great upside, and really excited about it. But it was one where I had to rely on others and step outside that comfort zone.
And what do you love most about growing a small business?
I like the idea stage, coming up with something fun. I mean, that's for me, it's coming up with something fun, taking an idea and then executing. It's usually that first kind of building it to a prototype and I hate the word, but I'll use it anyway, minimally viable product. And that's a whole other tangent as to why I dislike that word. But, but building it to that, hey, I took an idea and I built it to something that you can actually use or you can actually see that actually functions. That's the most exciting part. And then there's certainly building the business, revenues, making it profitable and everything else. But the most exciting part is that initial phase of building it.
Yep. What have you enjoyed least about managing fast growth?
Oh, easy one is taxes. I just don't like taxes and payroll. But so that one's and I think most people, you ask most business owners, they're not going to say, "Oh, I love to do taxes and I love to make payroll." That one's never fun. Yep. The other one that was one beyond that it took me a while to learn and to figure out is on hiring, and I think that's another one. Hiring was one that you always read about and you think, "Oh, I know people, I can read people," and that. But then you get into the thing of, hey, we're growing really fast and we need to be bringing people on and we need warm bodies. And this person, no, they're not a rock star, but they're not bad. Let's hire them. Yep. And those have always been my worst hires and the ones I learned the most from. Yep. And then the other one said, doesn't matter how quick we're growing, doesn't matter what, I'm only going to hire rock stars, people that I'm excited about, that really will contribute to the business. Those are the people I'm going to hire. And those have been the best ones. So that one's been the one that has been stressful that I've learned from, and that has been part of that growth curve that has been a lesson learned. Yeah, great. We've got another question on that in a minute, but what's been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey? Mind shift probably would be that, when you're starting out as a business, you're really just, how do I make money? How do I get there? How do I make sure that the business stays alive? And how does it, how do I make payroll? How do I keep people happy? And, no matter what you see in the movies or, what people say, if you don't pay people, they don't want to work for you. In the sense that everybody, crazy thing, people always want a paycheck. They always want their money in their account. But But that one was a shift from how do we make money to how do we grow the business? And they're not quite the same thing in the sense that once you get that foundation, that basis of, okay, we're making money. Now it's not just how do we continue to make money, but where's the business growing? How do we grow it? How do we actually expand it? And where do we expand it to? And that was kind of a shift in mindset just from the bootstrapping, making a living, getting money into how do I make this into a bigger business?
Yep, great. What is the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say that you need to be a constant learner, and in the sense that if you know, there's you can use all the old cliches, but if you're not growing, you're dying type of a thing. And I don't know
Henry Ford. If you're not learning, you're old. Yeah,
exactly. And there's a whole bunch of cliches, but there is you need to be learning what is going on, keeping apprised of what's going on in the market, what others are doing. And even for me, and I take on all of our businesses, I'm always looking not only to see what my industry is doing, but what are completely other industries that are unrelated doing, and how can I apply that to my industry, and how can I actually make that a difference? So give you an example. And I have nothing to do with real estate, but I listen to a real estate podcast. It's all about real estate marketing. And I figure, I don't do anything with real estate, but they are great salespeople. And if you look at great marketers or real estate, they have to be good. It's a lot of times very competitive and to get to the top of the market. So I said, what are they doing that I can learn from and implement in my businesses? Because, how can I import other industries and what they're doing into mine? So having that consistent learning mind frame is, I think, one that's a great skill.
Totally agree with that. Yeah. Find it hard to define a clear strategy, then communicate it and execute it alongside the rest of your team? Or you currently don't work a simple quarterly strategic plan to boost your team's performance? Our Business Growth Formula online course is perfect for small business owners with 5 to 30 team members wanting to grow. We share the mindsets, habits and tools to be a legendary leader in your business. growsmallbusiness.com. Now, the big one, can you talk about how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes and advice for those listening?
Yeah, and we kind of hit on one, but maybe I'll expound on it. The one that I think is the biggest mistake, and then I'll go to how we do it now, is the biggest mistake is you're growing to the point that you need more people to get everything done. You don't have enough hours in the day. You don't have enough people to get everything done. And so the temptation is let's hurry and go out and hire someone. We got to get someone. And they're okay, but they're not great. But I've got to hire someone so I can get everything done, or otherwise customers are going to be unhappy, or we're not going to meet deadlines. And as much as you have that pressure, I would almost guarantee you, for most people, that is when you make your worst hires. Yeah. If you're trying to just rush out and hire someone, find someone. And so now I've made a rule that if I'm not excited about the employee, if I'm not going to, so first of all, backing up, I lengthened the process that we go through hires. Meaning we don't just do a 1-round interview or 2. We end up doing about 3-round interviews, and one of the round interviews is that we actually have them do a project like they would do on our business. So we try them out. We say, hey, we'll pay you for it. We're not going to ask you to work for free, but before we hire you, go out and spend 5 or 6 hours, take this kind of miniature project, see what you do and how you do it, and I can then understand if you're a good fit. And if you,
I heard about this, Devin, this technique for interviewing a while ago. It really cut down, maybe a year or so ago. It's genius because some people even do this before they get to interview stage. They will go through CVs, shortlist, and say, right, maybe have an initial chat with people, but see if there's a bit of a connection there. But then, say for 10 or 20 candidates, give them all a project, and like you said, pay them for that time. And then I was floored when this person was for a development role, but it can be used in many other parts of the business. More than half people never handed the project in. Say 30% missed the deadline. So there you've just 80%, you've whittled your list down. You've cut 80% immediately because you're not going to hire someone that can't hit a deadline, obviously. And then the 20%, you can start to have a look at the quality of their work. So it's a really good way to filter out and reduce your time in this process.
Yeah, I think it does a few great things. So I'm a proponent of it. One is you get to see what first of all, to your point, if they can't even, if they're not excited enough, especially now, I get it, if they weren't being paid, they may not take seriously. But if I'm paying you, especially at the same rate as what you'll make at the job, you should be happy that I'm getting paid, especially, that, so that you take that away. But then you get to see, okay, are they going to meet deadlines? And I always have one rule. If they stand me up on an interview, I just kick them out. I'm saying if they can't even if I'm trying to hire you and give you money and give you, give you opportunity and find out if they don't show up for the interview, they're out. But then if they miss deadlines and says, hey, if I'm having this trouble right now, it's not going to start on the right footstep. No. But then the candidate also gets an experience. Hey, I give a representative project and they say, oh, I don't want to do this. This is not something I enjoy. Then you can weed those people out and then say, these aren't people that are going to like the position because they don't like this type of project. And then to your last point is you can find the rock stars that are saying they did an awesome job. They really put in time and effort, and you can see that how they think and the way they approach projects, and do they do this or do they not do this and everything else. And you just get a ton more insight, and it helps to reduce turnover and also to identify those people that are just going to take your company to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
I think another thing I've learned is to keep the culture, or define what the culture is. And it's one that's so overused. I hate giving the answer. It's true, but it's just, there's so many people that just say culture, culture, culture. And what does that even mean? But it's figuring out what you want your company to focus on and how you want to approach it. And I think that one's the easiest one. It's easy to get pulled off. You can find, that going back to our last question, you can find the rock star that will do an awesome job, but they don't get along with people, and they always want to do it their way, and they don't want to do it the way that the company's set up, and they always tend to kind of pull you off in a different direction. And then if you're not careful, you kind of stepwise, you're no longer the business that you started out to be, and you don't like running your own business, or you don't like these things about it. And so I think that the biggest thing is define or how you want to run your business, what is its objectives, and then don't let yourself get pulled off course.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah. And how much professional development have you invested in yourself? Sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, give you an example. When people ask me what my hobbies are, my first answer is always startups. And so
second is learning, professional development.
Second is learning. So I love to read books. And part of that is, I love two things as the primary ways I love to learn. One is I love to listen to podcasts, because then I can listen to it when I go out for a run, when I'm in a car, and I don't just listen to podcasts or, fictional stories of that, but it's like, how do I learn new skills and that? So love to learn on that. And then I always love to read books that are going to, and a lot of times I like to read or biographies of business people, right?
Yeah, me too.
This is how they build their business. And give you a quick shout out. My favorite book, and you didn't ask, but I'll drop it anyway, is one of them is That Will Never Work. And it's by, it's about the starting of Netflix, and how it was actually Reed Hastings is the one everybody hears, but Mark Randolph, people don't often realize, was the founder of Netflix, and it was how he came up with the idea. Reed Hastings told him that will never work and all that. So I love reading those type of books and seeing how do people that have built great businesses do it?
Was it Reed or Mark that had got the late fee from Blockbuster and cracked it and said, right, I'm going to start something up?
Yeah, they kind of, or Mark, I think it was Reed. Mark kind of debunked that in the book. And so he's kind of saying, that's a good origin story. Is it really true? I don't know. Maybe it's true, but it sounds great. But
the PR team got in on that one, I think. Yeah. I've done it again. I've skipped a question because I'm too engrossed in our conversation here. So Peter will throw this next question back ahead of professional development. But tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Yeah, balance is, I think, one of the toughest things to do if you're in startup and small business. I mean, it's easy if you're working for somebody else. You have a 9 to 5, you clock in, you clock out, and nothing wrong with that. But if you're running your own company, startup, small business, or even a bigger business, but you run it, balance is hard. And the reason, and I'll get to your answer, but the reason I always find balance is hard is because there's always fires to put out in a business, meaning there's never a shortage of fires to put out, and you can put out fires all day, and you'll come in tomorrow and there are a whole bunch of new fires to put out, and you'll go home and there's more fires to put out. And so there's always fires, and the temptation is to, I just got to put out this fire and then I'll focus on my family, or I just got to put out this fire and then I'll focus on my spouse, or I put out this fire and then I'll focus on religion, or whatever the case may be. And so you're always putting, because they're the nearest term, they're the short term things that you need to fix, and all those other things are easy to push out. And yet if you push them out forever, you're going to miss them, and you'll put out fires, and you'll never find that balance. So for me, it was really just, I've got to find a way to say there's always going to be fires tomorrow. There's always going to be, unless the whole building is burning down and I have to put it out, I'm going to wait. And those things can wait till tomorrow. and I always like to say, what are the ramifications
Yeah.
if I don't get it done today? And unless they're so consequential to the business that it's going to kill it, then I'm going to wait and put out those fires tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, it is hard, isn't it? Because of that double-edged sword of loving what you do, but then also switching off, going home and being present and focused with family and friends. And yeah, I still grapple with it every week.
And, you know, some weeks or months or years, I do an awesome job. And other times I need to repent and do better. And it's, I don't know that you ever just find the balance and you're done. It's always a constant struggle.
Yeah, totally agree. If you've had any mentors or coaches along the way, tell us about that experience and the value they've added.
Yeah, so I'll pick two mentors. One is a personal mentor that I know face to face, and one I look off from afar but still treat as a mentor. So the one mentor is, you know, as cheesy as it may sound, would be my dad. He was one that I grew up watching him, and he would do a 9 to 5, and then he would do a lot of side businesses and hustles, and then he started his own business, and I got to watch a lot of that. And as it works out, I get to work with him on a lot of projects now side by side. So not only did I get to see him do a lot of his own businesses, grow these things and take on those things, now I get to work along with him. So he's been a great mentor. I get to see, you know, a lot of the skills, a lot of things you learn. We get to sit down, have lunches, have discussions. It's been a blast. So he's a great mentor.
Right. Yeah.
One that I would say I look from afar that is not necessarily a personal mentor or somebody I know is I like to look at Dave Ramsey. And Dave Ramsey, if people don't know who he is, personal finance, he's built a big company on getting out of debt. And I like how he has taken, you know, leadership and entrepreneurship and how he's grown a business and how he's kept the culture and how he's focused on helping people. And just that is one that I like to see how he does things and try and emulate him.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. And what about a board of directors? Do you have one at the moment for the wearable tech?
Yeah, so there is a board of directors, and it ranges. A lot of it is more skewed towards medical, medical directors, people that have been in the industry, salespeople, and that. We have, try and make that also diverse. So we also get a few other people in that, but we take those as, a lot of them are investors and they want to, be able to understand how their investment is being used, but also other people we brought on and just surely, hey, they are really smart. They're really connected. They really can help the business. We need them. And so then we brought them on as well.
Yeah, great. So how many board members and how often do you meet?
Typically it's once or twice a month or at least for a portion of them. I'd have to think there's 7, 8 board members. I think there's some right in there, but generally about that number. Yeah,
great. All right, Devin, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
We probably already hit on, probably out of everything, the work-life balance is going to be the one that has been the most consistent struggle, the one that you think you have it under control and then it gets out of control. And that one, I think, out of everything, and you could say, hey, coming up with the ideas are easy. Now execution's hard. Yeah. Ideas are easy. Yeah. Coming up with building a business, getting it funded, all those are hard. But the one that I probably consistently struggle with the most is the work-life balance.
Yeah, great. And favorite business book, which has helped you the most?
So I mentioned one. I love That Will Never Work. Well, the other one is also by Dave Ramsey, but it's EntreLeadership, and it's basically the meshing of entrepreneurship and leadership and how you really have to have both in order to run a company. And so I love that book by Dave Ramsey, and that's been a great one.
Great. Putting that on my list right now. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your professional development?
Well, I love podcasts, so that's a hard question to say. I'll give you a few. I'll give you, so kind of an aside, I love business, or there's a podcast out there, it's called Business Wars. It's by Wondery, and it kind of gives the head-to-head competition between businesses. And so recently they did Pizza Hut versus Domino's. They've done Hershey's versus Mars. They've done, Southwest versus, I think, Delta, and a whole bunch of different ones of and FedEx versus UPS. And it's really interesting. And I think that you can learn how they competed and went to head-to-head. These are these huge companies and just kind of name recognition. You think, how do they get started and how they do it? I love that podcast.
What's the name of it? Sorry, the title of that cast?
Yeah, Business Wars, and it's by Wondery.
Business Wars, right, yeah. That sounds similar to, have you read Jim Collins' Built to Last?
I've listened to that one frequently as well. Yep.
Yeah, I love that how he has obviously a great company and the comparison company. So McDonnell Douglas versus Boeing, for example. Yeah, so that sounds like a really interesting cast.
Yeah, it's one that I really enjoy. And my 10-year-old son, I've converted him, and he loves to listen to it.
Good. Great. Any other podcasts you want to mention?
If I were to go to the legal side, so I kind of have one that's on the business side, I have one that's on the legal side, and I have one that's on politics or news. I guess news is the better one than politics. So I hit on kind of the one that's on the business side. If I were to go to the legal side, there's one that I really enjoy. It's called Profit with Law, and it's for any law firm owner, and you really can get a lot out of it that's even not for law firm owners, but just service industry in general. But I love that one, and it really hits on a lot of good notes.
Yeah, great. And one tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
I am a proponent across a lot of the businesses of automation, and not automation for the sake of getting rid of jobs or anything. But I'm saying if I've got a thing that I'm repeatedly doing over and over and over, and it's monotonous and I can really automate it, then why don't I free up my time to do other things and automate that? So I love HubSpot. There are other ones out there. You can automate it, whether it's how you bring people in, how you take care of clients, how you move them along, how you keep track of them. That's one that I think is a great tool. But there are others out there, but that's the one I like.
Great. Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
So I'll give it as an example. So I would have said that there are ups and downs. The way that I used to describe it was a roller coaster, and there's ups and downs, and you're going to hit the highs and lows. The one that, if I were to talk to myself and say there are ups and downs, but it's really more like going to the full theme park, in the sense that you park the car and you're all excited to go in. You go in and then you find the first ride. You ride a few rides. You go up and down. You go all over, and then you get sick and you have to take a break so you don't throw up. And then you get really excited and you go hit the bumper cars and get banged all around and you hit back and forth. And then you take another break and they say, now I'm going to go get the corn dog. And you stuff yourself with a whole bunch of corn dogs and you're really full and it's really good. And then you get sick again. And it's kind of that whole theme park of, you got to just be able to take a lot of different, not just ups and downs of banging around, getting sick and everything else. Yep. And you just got to strap in, be ready, and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for your time today, Devin. I think the audience will get a lot of value out of what you shared with us today, and congratulations on your success to date and future successes.
Well, thank you. It's been fun to share a little bit about the journey and a little bit about what I've done. So thank you for having me on.
And for our audience, we would greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.